Namaste, lads and ladies. Welcome back, finally, to another tattoo story time. I'm so sorry it's rather late at night. I've had to do a couple of things up to this point, so I couldn't really get it done early in the morning. So for that, I can only apologise. But I want to get this out to really cover this next tattoo because it's actually quite a monumental one to me in a certain sense because of a friend of mine that I used to practice martial arts with. His name is James, and he's been one of the most influential chaps of my young younger days as a martial artist. Basically, I met him when I first took up ninjutsu or jujutsu, if you like to call it that way, or technically we call it nimpo. But for the design itself, I wanted something to symbolize something that kind of represented like him being like my Apollo Creed to my Rocky, if you know what I mean. There comes a time in your life when you meet someone who either you're like enemies with. I was never his enemy. Me and him, we kind of fought on the same plane. You know, we both had the same interest in martial arts and the same intellectual dive into what martial arts is, basically. So I kind of wanted to take like advice and like inspiration from the Rocky 3 film, you know, where this is like after Clubber Lang gets defeated, and Apollo was basically in his corner throughout the whole instance, teaching him how to be more fluid and be a better fighter, basically. That's kind of what James was for me, really, and I wondered if I was something like that to him. I remember going over to his place one time and we watched The Raid. I'd never seen a film like that before, and he kind of like opened my eyes to the whole idea of being expansive with your martial art, basically. You know, it was just nice to see another practitioner who wasn't like bound by the constraints of traditional martial arts in a certain sense. I mean, I was already like experimenting with different martial arts at the time, so with him, he kind of like showed me the differences and fluidity of the film. But before I get into that, let me show you the tattoo. So they're both Taekwondo practitioners. One is in black, one is in white. If you're wondering why is it in that kind of like blocky sort of shape, I wanted it to kind of look similar to the art style, like if you've seen it at the end of like Rocky 3, where Apollo and Rocky come in to like punch each other in the face. I believe Apollo won that fight. I'm not so sure, but it would have been nice to watch that fight. Like if they like dedicated like a good hour's worth to that fight, I would have liked to have seen it, really, because you know it was like the decider between them, you know, because Apollo won the first fight and then Rocky won the second. So then, you know, that would have been nice to have a decider on it, basically. You always have a decider with stuff like that. But with me and James, it wasn't like competitive or anything like that. We did spar, like, don't get me wrong, we sparred from time to time. We didn't go at each other hard, but we kind of knew our discipline well enough so that we didn't hurt one another. But there were a couple of times when we did get caught either on the cheek or in the gut or something like that. We practiced different forms, you know, punching, kicks, throws, stuff like that, really. My favourites were jiu-jitsu because I think that's the one I excelled in the most. Boxing is not my thing. That's why I practically picked up Wing Chun to help me with my size stature, because I'm 5'5", basically. So my smaller height basically benefits me to learn Wing Chun when it comes to the fast, rapid punches and the offensive style that comes with it. You know, because the whole point of Wing Chun is like getting in their face and pushing them back to the point where you can actually find an opening to escape from them. If you've caught yourself in a fight, the worst thing you want to do is fight them. So the best way to do away with a fight is to end it quickly. And Wing Chun is one of the best ways of doing that, is being able to get within the person's face and then giving them an idea of like, oh, what you've got, what type of intensity you have, and you want them to regret the type of intensity that you're going to bring to them, basically, in a certain sense. So when I first watched The Raid with James, it was very interesting because I've never seen something as like, you know how some Asian films are, some of them like with the wire fu stuff, like where they use like the pulleys to like lift the actors up and they do their kicks and stuff like that. It looks fun to do, and it is fun to watch and all that, you know. It's fun if you want like a comedic style of stuff like that. None of that happened in the raid. Like, not from what I know. Like, a couple of the scenes, maybe they used a couple of waifu techniques. Like, there was this one scene where I think one of the soldiers or the police officers kind of like jumps from this little banister onto another floor's banister. I think that's where they used it, because you're not going to jump from one banister to another, especially when there's like a significant height difference. I think it was like what, 2 maybe 3 feet worth of a height distance. So they had to use a pulley for that. But anyway, it's a brilliant film about 100 police officers that go into this building with like this drug dealer who has like these other lackeys that are living in an apartment, practically like on the dime a dozen, like rent free and stuff like that. Well, not rent free, but you know what I mean. It's dirt cheap because they're all part of this little criminal organization. Anyway, they're going through the floors and all that, and then they end up coming across a boy that gives their position away, and then all hell breaks loose. There are some fluid, fun, beautiful moments of martial arts in this film. It's really good. Like, I never watched a film like that had that fluid type of flow in martial arts. And normally the films with the best martial arts are usually Chinese, Thailandish, Indonesian, or Filipino, because Filipino stick fighting is one of the most interesting forms of martial arts. It's how they teach you to keep swaying the stick, and with knife techniques as well. Always keep moving, always on the offensive, always like distract them and stuff like that. Like, if you drop your stick, sod it, just use your hands to get in their face and just elbow them, punch them, get out on that, all that stuff, you know. So Filipino martial arts being brought into that was very gorgeous to see, because there was this one scene with this guy. He's probably smaller than me, maybe like 5'3", something like that. And maybe my height, I'm not so sure, but he is so good. I cannot remember his name, but he is such a good martial artist. He's such a good fighter, and he's facing this sergeant who has a knife aimed at him, and he's got like the smaller guy. He's got the gun pointed at him, and so he's basically put the knife down. And then he's basically thrown the gun away. Well, he's like uncocked it and like thrown it all away, and he's saying to him, "Everyone in this building has a particular drug: heroin, coke, alcohol, nicotine. My drug is this. Fighting is his drug." And so he just goes into this brilliant, free-flowing form of fighting. He throws off a couple of kicks that actually land perfectly, even though he's quite smaller than the other guy. That's what I love about Taekwondo. I wanted to get Taekwondo because that kind of like emulates the closest form, I think, to free-flowing kick styles that this guy was able to do to this sergeant, but also have that same art style of Rocky, which kind of like emphasizes the relationship me and James had when it came to our love of martial arts. I wanted to envelop that into this tattoo. And so to carry on with the film, basically, if you've seen it, great. If you haven't, I'll explain it a little bit more. The sergeant ends up losing his life, unfortunately, after he just brutally knees him in the face. Like, he does this beautiful spinning kick to his head, and then as he's on his knees, he then spins and then knees him square in the nose with it, and he's just standing there, just taking in the rush of adrenaline from the fight. Because it's true, when you're in a fight, it's really difficult to explain. You have two things that happen, well, three things happen. You either fight, which this guy obviously did, or you fly away, which is basically running away, you know, or you freeze. It's something that usually happens in dangerous situations, and there is a rush that comes from it in a certain sense. I have experienced the rush, but it's something that I don't like. I don't like the feeling of my heart pounding in my ears. I don't like the feeling of my heart pounding against my chest. I don't like the idea of blood surging through my body into my arms. It's like causes you to go stiff when normally you're meant to be more relaxed, which is why I took up Tai Chi and other forms of meditative martial arts to kind of counter-react the imbalances of human nature. Because in human nature, when adrenaline rushes you, usually adrenaline is good for running, basically, so flight is the best thing for that. But when you're fighting, it is the worst thing that can happen, because when you're filled with adrenaline, you're not thinking straight, you're not thinking properly. You're just in that moment, you think, I've got to barrel through everything in my way so I can get safety and all that. But Tai Chi and other types of forms of meditative martial arts helps you to kind of control that, which is why I took up Qigong for a short while. That was mainly for breathing, really. Qigong is normally a form of mind over matter martial arts, which, if you've seen like videos of Shaolin monks that have done like Qigong practice and training, or Iron Shirt they would call it, they would basically put all of their chi from their body into a center point, like their chest or their stomach and stuff like that. Like, when I speak about it, you might think it's fake, like how they're able to like put the spears on their chests, or how they like handle such like bone breaking things. Like sometimes they'll put like these like steel plates or these steel ruler like things, and then they'll smack it on their head and it will break and no pain. They'll just calm themselves basically. So I wasn't like looking to like take like a cannonball to my chest anytime soon. So I used Qigong as a way of practicing like that rush of adrenaline basically, because soldiers do this as well with their cadets. Basically they shit test them by having them go through bee stings. Like, bee stings are basically things where they test to see if you're able to have an on and off switch where you can just switch it on and then switch it off if you have to. Like in the SAS training series and all that I've been watching, brilliant series. If you haven't seen it, go watch it, it's fantastic. Where they will teach you to just go head on at the instructor. He's all kitted out basically, so he's safe. Just wail on him as much as you want. Let all that visceral anger out, any dark feeling you have in you, let it out on the person. And then when they say stop, stop. Calm, collected, go about your way. That's one of the most difficult things that I think humans can do, really, in a certain sense. I've had two situations where I was in a fight where it didn't end very well for me and the other person. We both were quite bloodied at the end of it. I managed to get the upper hand because I was able to utilize my environment, so that means stones and sticks and stuff like that. You know, I'm not going to end up on the floor, because if you end up on the floor, you don't know what will happen. You can get your head kicked in, especially when there's groups of people around you and stuff like that. So I've had to use what I've had to survive. And there were a couple of moments when I was on top of the guy and I could have easily have kept going, you know. But that's when you then need to think to yourself, is that the right choice? And then in that moment, I kind of put myself into his position where I kept screaming to myself, you know, don't do this, do not end up like him, you wouldn't want to be put in this position, so don't put him in that position. Yes, what he's done is effed up, you know, like, but you don't want to put yourself into his position, and you don't want to put him into a position where he can't recover. So I calmed down, I threw the stick away, I just left him on the floor. I kept my eye on him, but he didn't move for like a good 10 minutes or so until he got up, dusted himself down, and then walked off in the other direction. I kind of stood there for a minute, didn't really know what was happening. Like, I was waiting for the adrenaline to go away, but it wouldn't. Like, I could hear my heart pounding in my ear, and like, it was the first time that I felt like I had someone's life in my hand, and it could have gone the wrong way. But I thought to myself, like, you can't do it, man. You can't have that type of power and then decide to play God with this person, basically. We've all had moments where either we've been bullied and we've fought out against our bullies, or, you know, someone else has been bullied, so you feel like you have to stand up for them. I've been that person a few times, and it's even gotten me in trouble. Like, it even nearly cost me my opportunity to go to college, because the guy I was protecting ended up kind of lying to say that I did something like that to him, because, you know, he was scared of the bully of doing something worse to him, which I understand. But the fact that the teachers didn't even like take like a second guess, like, as to say like, oh well, maybe he's just scared, they just believed that I did something like that to him. And even the other students kind of like rallied around the kid, so it was kind of hard to like pull yourself out of something like that, which is kind of disheartening in a certain sense. But you shouldn't really lose heart in moments like that, really, because I feel like when you're scared, you don't know what you're thinking. And it was kind of like that case with the first guy that I had a really big fight with, basically, because what he did was kind of effed up, really. He kind of called my friend, well, let's just say a racist slur. You know, I don't take kind to racism, really. And my friend was kind of, yeah, he had a hard life. He had a very hard life, so I wanted to make his stay at our school more pleasant, really. So I'd always meet with him after we had like communion at the church and all that. We went to a school called Newman, which was mostly a Catholic church, so we'd always go to the church to hear a couple of hymns and say a couple of prayers and stuff like that. Then he would take me to his church, which was an all black choir, basically, which is brilliant. If you ever gone to like an all black church, like if you ever gone to one of their choirs and stuff like that, it is so hype and so brilliant. Basically, they had the whole thing as well. They had the whole the vicar telling the praises of God and all that stuff, and I just loved it. It was awesome. But yeah, he said some racist stuff to him, so me and him ended up getting into a scuffle with the three guys that were kind of like picking on him. Like, he took care of one guy. I think I managed to dispense with the other, and my guy was a bit tired, so he kind of like sat out. He kind of like watched the other two that were on the floor, and me and this other guy were just banging at each other until I ended up on top and started ground and pounding him with a stick. And then that's when I kind of then held myself off. So really, it's thanks to James, really, where I was able to kind of expand my knowledge of martial arts and expand also not just the martial side of things, but also the arts side of it. You know, there's always two things to one thing, what you learn, basically. So it took me a while to really get to grasps with the arts side of thing, you know, because when I was younger, I just wanted to learn martial arts because I wanted to defend myself and defend my friends whenever they needed it, really. But the arts was a much more harder thing to grasp, really, because to learn about another culture is something entirely different, because not only are you just learning about the martial arts itself, it's about the culture that comes with it in a certain sense. And through your students and your teachers and your fellow practitioners, you learn so much. You know, there's very little you can learn from someone just by talking to them, but when you bang fists with someone, if you trade punches, you trade blows, you submit someone, if they submit you, you learn more about how that person carries themselves than they could ever tell you. And that is very true. I've always believed that, you know, a good little spar with that person that you have a disagreement with is hands down the best way to learn who they are as a person. And it goes for an awful lot of people in life, really. I feel like you have to go through a hardened situation for you to become a better person in a certain sense. But of course, it's down to your choice to improve yourself, and then the choice to, let go of things that hold you down in a certain thing. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect. You know, I also have my dark moments in history. You know, I lost a few friends to suicide, unfortunately, and I'll probably talk about that in a later period of my life. But right now, it's just very hard for me to do. It's just really fresh on my mind whenever I think about them. So whenever I talk about them, it becomes too real, and then the memories just keep flooding back. So I just prefer not to speak about them, at least until I have a moment in my life where I can truly say that I've gotten past it. You know, that I can look upon their memories with, you know, more than just the hurt that came with their passing, basically, and the hurt that they had to go through, unfortunately, because of certain events that happened to them, really. So that's partly why I got this tattoo for one James, who kind of helped me see what I wanted to do as a person and how to adapt my character in a certain sense. You know, you can hate the world as much as you like, and the world can hate you back, no problem. But the hard choice is just choosing whether or not to become better from it and learn from certain mistakes and stuff like that. I'm not saying everyone is perfect. Everyone makes their mistakes and all that stuff. What you do with it, that matters really at the end of the day. So for that, that's my tattoo of my Rocky style horror picture taekwondo thing. I was trying to make a joke of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, but it didn't work very well. I'm not a very funny person unless I'm like reading script from comedians like Lee Evans and stuff like that. You know, oh god, you want funny, you want to watch Lee Evans. The man's funny. Buddy Connolly as well is a brilliant comic. So funny to watch. Oh, I actually introduced James to a couple of my favourite comedians, and I don't think he's like not watched a single show, like from previous like engagements with them. Like I think Billy Connolly is his favourite just because of how dry wit and dry humoured and how realistic Billy Connolly is. Like if you want a real conversation, just talk to a comic basically. You know, talk to a cynic. They'll always tell you the truth, but with a smile on their face. You know, it's quite hysterical how funny some of these people's dark stories are, and it's unfortunate as well with Billy because Billy is the perfect representation of how life can give you a bad hand, but you make it what it is basically. Because I think his dad abused him, like Billy Connolly. From what I hear, I believe his dad abused him, but it didn't matter at the end of the day because Billy. Well, I mean, it does matter, but Billy doesn't let that bring him down. Basically, he just carries on with a smile, you know, and he's helped so many other people around the world smile. You know, if anyone can take a lesson out of how to improve your own life and how to look on each day with a better light, it's Billy. And that's something that I really want to push for in the future when it comes to men's mental health, really, is being able to smile after hard times that have fallen upon you, really. It doesn't matter if you've been stricken with grief or if you have. In us, there is always a dark place, and I feel like you need to have those lighter moments, you know, those heartwarming moments with your friends and family to shine a little bit of light on that dark place to help you recognize that it's something that can easily be swiped away with a little bit of light. Like literally, you go into a dark room, imagine that as your depression or your anger or something. It just takes one little flick of a switch of light to pierce that darkness, basically. Just one little flicker of light. If you can hang on to that light, then you can see your way through the dark end of the tunnel, basically. So, with that, lads and ladies, sorry, a bit of solemn note as usual again, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be solemn, but, you know, it's just, I hope that my vlogs and my stories of certain people that I've met in my life and certain events that I talk about can help you guys to kind of push through your dark times if you're suffering with them. You know, if you are, please write them down in the comments below. I really love to hear your stories, and I'd like to give you feedback if you really want it, or if you need help. You know, there are always hotlines to go to. You must always understand that you are never alone. As much as you may feel like you're alone, there is always someone there to listen and to lend a helping hand if you really want it. So, with that, lads and ladies, I thank you ever so much for watching another one of my videos. I hope you enjoyed the little tattoo story time. And next week, I will bring on my ma to talk about a tattoo that me and her got. It's a matching tattoo. And we'll talk about our little story of how we came about getting it, the kind of shoddy work the tattoo artist did on it, really. I'm not really too pleased with it. You know what I might do? After the entire Storytime playlist is done, you know, when I finally get all my tattoos done on my body, I might probably do a tier list. I might probably do a tier list on my tattoos, like from ranging from sentimental value to looks and how they've healed and stuff like that. That might be pretty good, actually. But that saves for a later day. Right. Kept the epilogue going for long enough. I'm sorry, yeah, again, lads and ladies, for late night. I know the picture you're looking at is quite grainy, so I will apologise for that. It's just the light within the dark room, basically, so I can only apologise for that. So, with that, lads and ladies, thank you ever so much for watching, and yeah, I'll see you in whatever I next do around here. Take care, my friends.